what else is coming into the shop these days? It's sort of the end of summer. We're almost into the autumn.
Yeah. Obviously, AC, like the peak of the heat has died down.
Yeah.
But the humidity is there, so ACs are getting a real hammering. We get a lot of AC work this time of year, which is pretty typical. And like with everything, supply and demand, one of the bigger issues that we've seen that we have to deal with is that AC refrigerant is so expensive this time of year.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it?
Yeah. So obviously our prices stay the same. We don't change any pricing, but our supply, the cost of supply goes up, and we don't really use that much more than we typically would because we tend to buy as much as we can all in one go. But these things are typical for this time of year. AC, we have a lot of overheating. A lot of that I think stems from people leaving their cars running when they go into a shop or go into the school or whatever it may be, even though they're not really supposed to do that for many reasons. Mm. Yeah. It is understandable in the way of how hot it is. I get it, but it's such a dangerous thing to do. And also, most petrol stations have a rest area, or they'll have a little shop or supermarket. You can go in and get yourself a bottle of water or something like that, just to stay cool while the car's being filled. People don't take that offer a lot of the time. Like you say, they'll sit in the car and AC blasting and sending emails or responding to text messages that they've had while they've been driving.
Yeah, it's crazy. So with the fact that you've got to spend quite a bit for the refrigerant for AC,
yeah,
how are the customers taking that?
Well, we don't change our pricing.
Okay.
We don't.
So you end up taking a bit of a loss then.
Sort of, but it sort of balances itself out. We don't look. The summertime isn't like a lot of people that have AC problems during the summer. The summer isn't what causes them.
Mm.
They've had that problem, but the summer is when it shows, especially in the humid weather. Like,
oh man, that's you really notice it when it's really humid and you're sitting at a set of lights and the AC's working really well. Even in your house, the AC's working really well. Then you realize though, I can still feel some humidity.
Yeah, in the peak of the humidity, it's difficult because the evaporator, which is the part that cools the air, especially if there's a slight leak and the gas is getting quite a bit low, they can very easily start to freeze. The expansion valves start to freeze, and you end up with a situation where there's just, whenever you sat still, there's no air coming through. The fan on the engine is doing its best to keep the condenser cool, but it's really not able to do its job effectively until you're moving and the air's passing through. You sat in a queue of traffic, and the only thing blowing through the engine is hot exhaust from the car in front. So it's they have a lot of work to do, a lot of hard work to do, and that load is felt by a modern AC system. The compressors aren't either on or off; they're variable. So when they're running 25-30% on a cold day, and they're trying to do 100% or as near to it on a hot and humid day, they really start to struggle. And any kind of weakness on the system, like a lack of oil because of a small leak somewhere, or a fan that maybe doesn't turn fast enough, these sort of things cause a massive problem. And if you have ever gotten into a car, having walked to it from the office or from the school or wherever it may be, and got in and you turn the engine on and the AC starts to blow and it's not that chilly feeling, straight away this isn't good. Yeah. And it's the worst.
Everyone knows. Yeah. We all go into denial.
Yeah, it's the worst. We know. Yeah, it's the worst. You just cannot get cool. You're wet through from the sweat because of the humidity. Yeah. There's nowhere for your sweat to evaporate to. And then you end up in a worse situation with the AC blowing than you would be if you just had the windows open.
Yeah. So this is really the call this time of year. You've noticed little things are starting to happen with your AC. Make sure once it gets a bit cooler, get in and make sure you get it serviced, get it checked, so that you can avoid, some serious damage later on.
Like, I always think of it as, if you're a race car driver and you're going on a race and race day comes, you get to the end of the race, you know that when you get out of that car, the mechanics are then going to spend the next 24, 48 hours just fixing it and making sure it's okay for the next one. And that's the same, really. That's the same analogy. You can use that for AC in the summer. The summer is the race day for an AC system. And after the summer, you really should be, even if it's worked great, fantastic, that's what we want. But if you can get to a situation where, you get through the summer, the cooler months come, maybe the sort of first half term of school when you don't need the car for the daily school run, and you can leave it in the garage for a day or two, get it checked and let it have a bit of a breather and make sure that everything on there is okay, give it a service, make sure that the oil in there is replaced, make sure the refrigerant is at the right level, make sure that, things, the AC filter inside in the cabin is okay, clean the evaporator from the humidity that creates moisture, which creates mold. Get all of that done, and you'll thank yourself for it the next summer when you don't have a problem and your friends are telling you they've had the same issue.
And if in some places you can get do-it-yourself kits and stuff, just beware, there is oil that goes into your AC, and if someone's not going to be putting oil into it, they walk away.
Yeah.
They're not doing you a favor.
Yeah, these sort of do-it-yourself AC system,
You can see them on Amazon.
you get them, and it sounds like a great idea. But what happens is a lot of people, and it's not the fault of anyone, it's just that not everybody's learned in what we do. People sometimes look at AC. They look at AC as though the gas that is in there is being used by the system rather than is part of the system.
Right.
It's the actual change of state from a liquid to a gas that causes the cooling effect. And when you see a top up on like you say Amazon or eBay or whatever it may be that says to you, cold AC, just top up with this and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
You've got no gauge.
Don't believe it.
You could be overfilling it, which is worse because then you end up with liquid getting back round into the compressor, which damages the compressor. You could end up with a situation where, like you say, if you have got a leak and putting the gas in helps, you haven't replaced the oil, so now the system's working at full capacity, but it doesn't have the right amount of oil in it, so it's just going to wear itself out. So, yeah, these things are great if you know what you're doing, but that's not something I would advise somebody to purchase at all.
Yeah, there we go. So, but plan ahead. Start planning ahead. Start making notes on, especially if you're driving in country here in the UAE. If you're doing the Abu Dhabi, Sharjah route or any of the cross Emirate travel, you're going to start noticing stuff. Start making a list.
Yeah.
And start having a conversation with your mechanic saying, hey, I'm noticing this, or I'm noticing that. My brakes are getting a little mushy. How much longer do you think I need? Start having those conversations so you can start planning out the expenditure on your car repair over some downtime.
Yeah, we sort of, you see a lot of places that will say do the summer checks and the winter checks and stuff. Obviously, where the nations that we're from, the places we hail from, we used to do winter checks all the time. But that was mainly because we were changing the type of tyres that were fitted on there. And if you have a tyre that is no good for the summer, or vice versa, no good for the winter, you can put those tyres on and swap them around. But here, I don't really think there's anything you should do before the summer other than just the normal, making sure your tyre pressures are correct, making sure that, you might start thinking about not quite filling the tank up to the neck of it, making sure that, you've had a check and made sure that your cooling fan's working properly, etc., etc. But really, it's the checks after the summer, when the car's done all that hard work through the summer to make sure that it's going to be okay for the next few months as we go into, the climate here is fine. It's a lot more forgiving on a vehicle, but the car's done all of its work, the engine's done its work, the AC's done its work, and it's as hard as it's going to have worked. So to check them after the summer is more important, really, than checking them before, to be honest.
Mm. What about one of the things that's coming up again, and I know that we've talked about this over and over and over, but I'm getting the guys wanting to put the gas line conditioner in when I'm getting my car filled. Do I do it? Do I not do it? they're pretty hard on the sell. They're telling me my gas tank's dirty. They've got all the sales things, but I'm not sure any of these guys drive cars.
No, it's not something that we'd ever advise anybody to do. If there's particularly on modern engines with so many variables and so many things that are measured and monitored by the engine control unit and the engine control management system, putting an unknown or unexpected liquid additive into a fuel tank is not something that makes any sense, really. And okay, if you've been doing it from the start and you do it regularly once every 3-4 months, yeah, okay. But if you're putting it in as a one-off and not only you're not going to see any benefit from it, you may actually see a problem. And likewise, if you're doing it too often, you'll see a problem. We had a brand in the UK called Forte that we had a deal with through our dealership. And when we would use them, what we would do is we would pour one into the fuel filter housing when we change the fuel filter on a diesel, or we'd pour it into the tank on a petrol. And we just left it might have even been on DJ's car. He took his old fuel filter out. It was a metal canister one, and we just took the water drain off the bottom and left the whole thing in this stuff for a few weeks, and it just dissolved the interior of the filter. Now, obviously, You're not sat there with it idle, with it just sat in there, but some people, they are. So we don't advise it. It can do more harm than good. And if you're using them regularly, you're using them understanding what it is that you're doing, then okay, fine. At the end of the day, the guys that are selling them are on a commission, but you might be better off buying them a sandwich and a chai rather than letting them earn the commission from putting that in your engine.
Here's another one. Go to the Jiffy Lube at the service station, and they want to do a flush of my engine, my oil system. I don't know what they want to flush because I always say no, but they're pushing pretty hard. It's pretty dirty.
So some of the sealed pressurized systems that actually force a flushing chemical around the system, and then you can see what comes out, and it recycles it till you see everything that comes out. They're okay to a point. The problem I have with them is that they're going to start to affect seals, and it's a little bit snake oil. You're getting some of it out, but not all of it. What's happening with the bits that's not coming out? Where are they getting stuck? They're mobilized. Are they going to then get stuck in the oil strainer that picks the oil up out of the sump for the oil pump? Are they going to get stuck in the filter? These sort of things, these questions always don't tend to have any answers, and you're better off again just making sure you change your oil regularly. The manufacturers put service intervals on there for a reason, and if you follow them, or maybe on the cautious side, over service. So if a manufacturer says 12k, do it at 10. If a manufacturer says 18, do it at 15. And then as the vehicle gets older, understand that you're going to have to do it more and more often. You'll never really have a need for an oil flush.
Yeah. All right. What about an engine flush?
Yeah, so some people would call an oil flush an engine flush, but often what they actually talk about there would be a coolant system engine flush. And what you get with a coolant system is you have people won't add additive to their coolant. They'll put just water in because they've got the warning light on. They're on the way to a meeting, just quickly put water in and away we go, and then they forget because the light doesn't come back on, and it's not something they check every couple of weeks like they should.
Every week, I check every day. I drive old
beauty
cars.
Of driving old cars, right? So if you don't add the right additive, or you can add the wrong additive, people put too much additive sometimes.
Oh no, here's one. I got to share this one with you. So just pause the additive talk, but this is an additive talk. So typically here in the UAE, there's two types of engine coolant that I come across.
Yep.
Red and green. I go back home to Canada, driving this, old Jeep. I need some coolant because I notice, hey, there's a it's a little low, and I didn't check before, so I don't know if it's low because there's a leak in something. It's 2008. It could be just the reservoir, So I go into Canadian Tire. Everyone from Canada, if you're not from Canada, basically it is your everything store, but they sell everything you need for cars and trailers and stuff. But you can buy everything there. You want to buy an espresso? Go to Canadian Tire. You want to buy brakes? Go to Canadian Tire. So I go to the engine coolant area, There are it's an aisle. There are probably 100 different types of engine coolant there. So I just, I look at one, I pick one up, and it's, it's red. I'm going, all right, red, green. Is there not just a multi-purpose one here? Like, I'm going down the aisle. There's no multi-purpose. I'm picking them up. This one's for Hyundais, and it's got the 4 Hyundais that it's good for. Oh, this one's for Lexus, and it's got the 6 Lexus cars that it's good for. And I'm going, what's happening here? How is this possible? There's so many.
Yep.
and I'm looking at the guy because he's then scanning them with me because clearly he's bemused himself, going, I thought there was just one coolant you put in and that was it. And I'm going, well, it's which one of these goes for a Jeep then? Got any idea? Because I don't see one.
Yeah,
but I need coolant.
The majority of coolant additives are designed to do 3 main things. One of them, which isn't actually a massive part of it nowadays, is to increase the boiling point of the water. So an engine will comfortably get to 100 degrees C at contact points of the coolant, but you don't want it to boil. Water boils at 100 degrees C in our atmosphere, so we don't want that at sea level, so we don't want it. So it raises the temperature of that. The second thing that it does is it conditions some of the seals and the rubber. But the most important thing is it's a corrosion inhibitor for parts of the engine that are metallic. And there are still some, not many, but there are still some ferrous engines which are iron with the cylinder block. So these sort of things, what happens is, like we was just saying with the flush, you end up with an engine that the coolant comes out and it's all brown and rusty looking. Because it's not had the right amount of coolant additive in it, and the coolant additive that's been in there hasn't been changed regularly enough. And we're not talking about changing it every time you change the oil on the engine, but changing it every couple of years is a good idea. Most people with older cars will do that effectively because there will always be a coolant leak.
Yeah.
So it's not
constantly, constantly topping
exactly.
up.
So you're topping it up and getting repairs done and flushed out, but the most of them are based ethylene glycol, and if you don't put enough in, you might as well not put any in, because not enough isn't going to do anything. You might as well just save your money and just keep it in your wallet for when you have to pay for the repair because it's damaged, or you put too much in and it starts to go too thick, and it can go like Vaseline, especially in the radiator and places like that. It stops the flow. Obviously, in countries like, again, where you and I are from, the main purpose of the additives switches from what we've just spoken about to antifreeze.
Yeah.
Stops water freezing. Here, that's not relevant, but from where we're from, it stops it freezing. And, people that don't use it, they end up with the core plugs popping out because the expansion of the coolant, the water effectively that's in there when it freezes.
Well, that's why I'd never put water in my radiator.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
It's conditioned.
You can't do it where we're from because it will freeze.
It'll freeze.
So that's not good. And we have weak spots on the engine to fail in the event of that. But they don't always fail there. And when they do, it's still not the greatest job to have to repair. It's still an expensive job, even though the replacement part is pennies. The actual labour can be quite intense. So then you have to worry about, has it stressed anything else as well?
Yeah.
But here, the main thing that we need to concern ourselves with is that it's conditioning the engine. And if you don't use the right mixture, then that's when you have a problem with corrosion getting into the system. And the radiators and oil coolers as well are so fine. The veins in them are so fine that you'll block them very easily. And another problem here is water. Yeah, when I worked at VW, you could buy, or we only sold pure additive that we would then mix with our own tap water, basically. That doesn't happen now. Here, we have to, when we buy coolant from the dealer, it's ready mixed to the right strength,
right,
with water that they know is pure. And the reason we get a lot of oil cooler failures and things like that is down to hard water and limescale and other chemicals in the water that damage the component.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be the lesson for everyone. Just even if you have to go to the dealer, get the coolant for your vehicle.
Yeah.
Do not put water into
if
it.
You can get ready mix.
Everyone can ready mix.
There you
That's
go.
always
If
available.
anyone ever calls me and they're unsure of what to put in because they've got a leak and they just need to get it to the garage or get it home or whatever, first thing we'll say is, well, we'll send a recovery. If that's refused, then we'll say, okay, this is what we put in last time. If it's a new customer, we'll say, do you know what you put in last time? If they don't know anything about what they put in last time and we're not sure what it should have in, then we'll tell them just to put water in it if there's an emergency use to get it on the back of a truck or whatever it may be. But then when it comes into us, we will drain it and fill it with the right stuff. And, we get the odd look and the odd question about it when we tell a customer that we need to spend X amount of money on branded coolant, from VW or from Land Rover or from Mercedes. But we know from experience that when we do that, it's not going to come back in 6 months' time with an oil cooler that's failed because we've given it the best chance it can have.
Absolutely. And I think people forget about that. There's little things like oil coolers and stuff that they all need to have the correct fluids in them.
With an oil cooler repair, 50% of them, probably more, 50% of them are going to come back over the next 12, 18 months with hoses that start to fail because the coolant hoses are designed for coolant, not for oil.
Yeah.
And when oil gets in there, they start to go soft. And, an oil cooler is already an expensive job. So to go and tell somebody, look, we're actually going to have to take the whole engine out as well and change all of the rubber coolant hoses on it. And we're going to have to change the radiator because the rubber seals on the radiator. And we're going to have this and. So
they're not your friends anymore.
You just take it as a common sense approach, and we just get we get as much of it out of the system as we can with flushing it, and then we just have to hope that it's a while before there's any further leaks, and we explain that to people, so it's not overly surprising when it does happen, but it's still annoying because it will never happen at a good time.
No, never. And there you go. You're up to date for another week with the Car Talk podcast. Glenn Power is here. I'm James Piecowye, and we will do it all again really, really soon. Don't forget to like us and subscribe and share us with your friends. Glenn, it's been a great one.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.